Well, I just got back from the gym and saw this incredible news. This is the kind of news any American advocate is excited about. Take a look at this tweet from Congressman Randy Fine. Time to find out where loyalties are. My loyalty is to America, as it should be for every member of Congress. And what you can see here is it's an exclusive from Breitbart News, it looks like. Randy Fine's Disqualifying Dual Loyalty Act bans foreign citizens from serving in Congress. Now, that's Congressman Randy Fine photoed there. He is a Florida Republican congressman, finally introducing a bill that I would say is the first step in the right direction. But let's go over exactly what he has to say about this bill in the Breitbart article here. Representative Randy Fine, Republican from Florida, believes elected officials should be America first. Amen. And he has a new bill putting his money where his mouth is. Now, here's the funniest part. The freshman congressman. And so I just want to interject real fast. I love this. This guy is a freshman congressman, year one. And it turns out the first bill he has drafted and proposed, he's just going all in right away. You love to see it. That's what I expect out of a Florida congressman. The freshman congressman introduced the Disqualifying Dual Loyalty Act of 2025 on Friday to prohibit the election of any person holding foreign citizenship. Breitbart News learned ahead of the bill's filing. The short, straightforward bill states simply that no person, without regard to whether that person is a United States national, may be elected to the office of representative or senator if that person is a national of any country other than the United States. He states, I think it's a fair argument to make that you can only swear allegiance to one country, and if you're in Congress, that allegiance should be America. Fine's legislation would not only apply to future candidates, but would also require any current member of Congress holding dual citizenship to renounce foreign citizenship if seeking re-election. He states, people who may have dual citizenship can choose to give it up. It's not that if you've ever been a dual citizen, you are prohibited from ever serving. It's just that you can't be one moving forward. Now, to be honest, that statement right there is why I only called this a good first step in the right direction, because truthfully, I think we're going to need to take many more steps in the right direction going forward. But this gets the conversation going. I don't fully agree with this stance, in all honesty. You see, my stance on this, in all honesty, as time has gone on and as I've been able to observe everybody who's been in Congress, and as I've started to pay more attention to politics, I've seen just exactly what a large majority of congressmen and congresswomen who were not born here in America, who are foreign-born immigrants, though they came here legally, are now holding political office. You get to see what they advocate for, and it's not America first, and it's actually very troubling to watch. Currently, there are 2 foreign-born members of the Senate and 16 foreign-born members of Congress for a total of 18. You can see the names here and the year on the far end when they were naturalized. So we have Japan, Colombia, Mexico, etc., etc. You can see all these names. I'm just going to scroll down, show them all. Some of these names may stand out to you, in fact. I know this one does, for instance. Pramila Jayapal, born in India, naturalized in the 1980s, Democrat. If ever there was an example of what I'm saying here, where these foreign-born immigrants come here without American values because they weren't born and raised here, it's Pramila Jayapal. Every time I see her, I am utterly disgusted by what she stands for. She seems to only ever advocate for the most extreme of Democrat policies, and mostly she focuses on immigration rights. She also has no shame and just openly lies about nonsense, like in this clip here, where she blatantly was just lying to the American public, telling them that the deportations won't stop with illegal immigrants and that Trump will start deporting citizens, or that he, at very least, she said, he could deport citizens, which is absolutely outrageous and a lie.
I just want to be really clear. If you can do this to an undocumented immigrant, to an immigrant with a visa status, you can do it to a U.S. citizen. And I think this is why I've been so intent on doing these hearings, because I do think that Americans across the country, on both sides of the aisle, to your point, actually know that this is wrong, but the people that are here in this body that doesn't reflect what the American people think.
That's also a very dumb thing to say. The people here in this body, the elected officials, doesn't represent what the people think. What does it represent then? What kind of moron says that? But it gets even worse with her, because in February of 2024, just over a year ago, she was outraged at the idea that a DUI could result in an immigrant, legal or otherwise, being deported out of America. You know, facing consequences for driving so dangerously and recklessly while under the influence of something. She was taking the stand to adamantly defend these immigrants.
But this bill, designed to scapegoat and denigrate immigrants, will not solve the serious problem of DUIs. Public safety threats, including those who have been convicted of serious DUI offenses, are already inadmissible and removable under the Immigration and Nationality Act, and this bill would not change or enhance that. Under the INA, a conviction of a crime involving moral turpitude, where the punishment can be for a year or longer, makes an individual deportable. Courts have ruled over and over again that serious DUI offenses that put others at risk are CIMTs and make the perpetrators deportable. But this bill isn't about serious offenses, Mr. Speaker. Far from it. The bill says that a conviction for a single DUI offense, misdemeanor or felony, makes you instantly deportable, and an admission to such an offense makes you instantly inadmissible. No questions asked.
To summarize real fast, essentially what she's saying there is, so if these illegal immigrants or legal immigrants, because this covers this as well, if they're driving drunk, but they don't actually harm anybody or cause any damage or kill anyone, etc., then they shouldn't be deported. What harm was there? What did they do so bad? That's essentially the argument of this woman here. Why would we take the chance? And the fact of the matter is, that question that I just asked reminds me of how poorly her advocacy for immigrants driving drunk has aged. I know the internet has a short memory, but do we remember this breaking on the news just a few days ago? This was an immigrant. I actually believe he was an illegal immigrant, but regardless, driving drunk on a CDL license, causing a 3 or 4 or 5 car fatal accident crash. Absolute disaster. And a lot of people are to blame here. But instead of outcomes like that happening, Pramila Jayapal later would go on to say that a lot of immigrants might get buzzed and then go sit in their car and turn it on and put the heat on so that they can stay warm while they sleep off the intoxication. Yeah, okay, lady. That's just what most people do after a night out. They just go sleep in their car. Give me a break. The Democrats are always willing to argue for the exceptions. That's how they make their arguments. It's a bunch of nonsense. Also, she wanted to make it a point at the end of her speech here, where she basically was saying, please don't deport immigrants for driving under the influence. She also wanted to make a point here that she really hates the term illegal immigrant because people aren't illegal.
But my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have made it clear that they're not interested in sensible solutions, just in sensationalism. This bill is another example of that. And I hope my colleagues will stop referring to people as illegals. People are human beings. They have different statuses. Some are undocumented. If you want to say some are illegal, but let's not call human beings illegal. Tired of that language. I urge my colleagues to reject this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Typical woman offended over speech, tone policing everyone. What a bunch of nonsense. But is Pramila Jayapal perhaps just a fluke of a foreigner in Congress? Maybe she's just one of the bad, rotten ones, and there's probably a bunch of good ones up there, right? Well, let's take a look at another example. Here's Ilhan Omar. She pledges her allegiance openly to Somalia, where she's openly stated to her family back home and citizens there that her allegiance first and foremost lies with Somalia, and she holds her office here in America strictly to represent Somalia. On top of that, she openly claims that President Trump is a racist, that there's no denying it, and by default, that makes everybody who voted for him, MAGA in general, responsible for voting in a racist, and therefore makes them racist too.
But you say there's no debate about whether Trump's a racist, and a lot of people would agree with you on that. And in fact, there's been an explosion in the number of anti-Muslim, far-right, white nationalist groups in the US over the past couple of years. Your own state of Minnesota experienced a record number of anti-Muslim incidents in 2016. You yourself yourself, I believe, just a few weeks after your election victory, I think you had a cab driver call you filthy and ISIS and threaten to remove your hijab. How
that
much
never
do you
happened.
hold
That's
Trump
BS, you can
and
tell.
The rise of Trump responsible for this explosion of U.S. Islamophobia?
Oh, I would actually come very short of holding them exclusively responsible for the rise. I think when you demonize and dehumanize, it is easy for people to commit acts of violence against those individuals because they no longer see them as a person, as someone who has feelings, who's worthy of respect. And I think that is where we are moving away from the idea that we are supposed to be a welcoming nation.
So much irony in her statement there. She's talking about dehumanizing people to the point of where they become victims in society of verbal and physical abuse, including violence and possibly death. But then she goes and calls Trump a racist. She doesn't shy away from calling him a fascist. She's been recorded calling him as much. She dehumanizes MAGA. She just never ends with it. So the hypocrisy is just blatant. And did I mention, by the way, that she's also foreign-born? Would that shock you at this point? Comment down below. Are you starting to see the point here that I'm bringing up? Or do you think it's actually okay for foreign-born immigrants to come here and hold office? Let me know what you think in the comments below because I'm genuinely curious. I want to know how many people share this belief with me because honestly, though I originally thought the idea was a little harsh and unfair, as time goes on, I genuinely start to believe more and more it is the correct decision for America to make going forward. It didn't end here with Ilhan Omar. If you thought that was bad enough, she would then go on to just openly say that white men should be monitored and profiled.
A lot of conservatives in particular would say that the rise in Islamophobia is a result not of hate, but of fear, a legitimate fear, they say, of quote-unquote jihadist terrorism, whether it's Fort Hood or San Bernardino or the recent truck attack in New York. What do you say to them?
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. And so if fear was the driving force of policies to keep America safe, Americans safe inside of this country, we should be profiling, monitoring, and creating policies to fight the radicalization of white men.
I'm just at a point now, honestly, where I ask myself as an American, why do we tolerate this even? I mean, who voted her in? Why is she there? Why does she continue to hold office? And why is it allowed for her to hold office? And when you look into her backstory, when you look into her past and her possible history, it gets even more questionable. I've already made videos on that, though. Finally, when it comes to Ilhan Omar, I just want to point out something else that's even more deeply troubling. Because yes, it gets even worse. It gets worse than her calling Trump a racist. It gets worse than her calling Trump's voters a racist. It gets worse than her being a hypocrite by then going on to say we should profile and monitor white people, which is racist. But she, like everyone else from that part of the world, will not denounce Sharia law. Now, the thing is, I want you to notice the deceptive language and the dancing around the topic because she won't even utter the words. She won't even discuss why she won't condemn Sharia law. She won't say those words, condemn Sharia law. She won't even say it in context of a conversation. And this is what they all do. I began noticing this on Piers Morgan after the vicious, brutal Hamas attacks in October when he had a guest on who also wouldn't denounce Hamas and wouldn't even say it. None of them do it. But yet they can come here after being born overseas and they can get their citizenship and then run for office. Why?
Your second question is an appalling question because I always feel like there are bills that we vote on, bills we sponsor, many statements we put out, and then we're in a panel like this, and the question is posed, could you and Rashida do this? And it's like, how often should I make a schedule? Like, does this need to be on repeat every 5 minutes? Should I be like, so today I forgot to condemn Al-Qaeda. So here's the Al-Qaeda one. Today I forgot to condemn FGM. So here it goes.
Let me interject here real fast. How often do you need to do this? Every single fucking time you're asked. That's how often. Because you work for the people, and if they have that question and they have those fears, you owe it to them to answer it every single fucking time.
I mean, it is a very frustrating question. It comes up. You can look at my record. I voted for bills doing exactly what you're asking me to do. I have put out statements upon statements. There's a bill in Congress. There's a resolution that I am the co-author of that I voted out of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And so I am, I think, quite disgusted, really, to be honest.
There you have it. Again, the words condemn Sharia law never even coming out of her mouth. She continued to dance around it because that, though the question wasn't shown there in the video, that was the specific question was, will you condemn Sharia law? Do you condemn the discrimination women face in that side of the world due to Sharia law? And she wouldn't even discuss it. Instead, deflecting to Hamas and Al-Qaeda, basically implying that we should study her actions in politics to decide whether or not she does or doesn't. What a cop-out. And then turning it around on the person, the American, asking the question and telling the American, who was probably born here, I don't know, maybe not, but telling him regardless, or her, I'm disgusted by your question. How dare you ask me that? I've got one final example why we should probably not be tolerating foreign-born immigrants running for office in America and probably restrict that to a second generation, or I've heard arguments for third generation and beyond. Shri Thanedar. Now, this guy is probably pretty extreme as well, but all I've ever seen out of him is sheer 75 IQ behavior. And that is also made evident right here from a clip on the Piers Morgan show where he can't even explain to people what the Insurrection Act is, but he's against it. And what Trump is doing is illegal and unconstitutional. But when it comes to asking him what's in the actual Insurrection Act, he doesn't know. But he pretends to.
There is this raging argument now about whether it is constitutional to do what Trump is rolling out in places like Chicago.
It's unconstitutional. The solution is empower the local law enforcement.
Congressman, are you familiar with the Insurrection Act?
Yes, I am. And this
so what do you think that's for? You said that this was illegal for the federal government to send National Guard into cities and states. What do you think the Insurrection Act is for?
Congressman, do you actually know what the Insurrection Act says?
Well, look, what we saw happen in January 6th in the Congress, that's insurrection.
Are you familiar with what the Insurrection Act
Yes, I am. But
allows?
Look, this president has used all kinds of excuses to break the law. This president has used...
No, but that is the law. So what is the law, Congressman? You say you're familiar with the Insurrection Act, but you don't seem to be able to describe what it does. What do you think the Insurrection Act does?
Look, the issue here is that we need our cities safe. Americans want...
Yeah, that's pretty much my face there watching that as well. But in the actuality, it's really not that funny. That is embarrassing. That's absolutely embarrassing. And the thing is, it's not like we're incapable of witnessing a scenario where an American-born citizen gets elected to Congress and finds themselves in the same position, because in all honesty, I've already seen that too. So that's not even the most fair argument, but it is an example, once again, Shri Thanedar, not born here in America, looking like an absolute fool on the Piers Morgan show. And when you combine all of these incidents that I just showed you, I think that there's a strong argument for my case here. A lot of other countries would never tolerate this. They would never tolerate me, say, moving to their country, obtaining citizenship over a couple-year process, and then running for some sort of political office there. No way. It just wouldn't even be allowed. And for good reason. Other countries want to avoid an invasion scenario. Why we permit it, I don't understand. And I don't think I ever will. And the thing is, of course, this is a double-edged blade proposal because there are definitely some people I know who immigrate to America and they love America and they assimilate to America. And they probably would make great politicians here. And proposing a law would unfortunately mean that they wouldn't be allowed to run for office either. So I'm aware of that. But I think it is still a safer bet overall, in all honesty, going forward, to eventually draft a bill that does prohibit foreign-born immigrants from running for office in America. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And thanks so much for watching.